happened to us. And then yesterday I talked about the watermelon. Do you remember?
Yep.
Okay. We don't write the whole watermelon. If I go to Six Flags, I'm not writing about me riding in the car, riding the rides, getting a funnel cake, and then going home. I write about that one scary ride. My whole story is about just that one scary ride. It is the seed in the watermelon, remember? Our little seed. I don't write about going to Walt Disney World and talking about everything I did at Walt Disney World. I got to see my favorite princess, so I write a story about getting to see my favorite princess. Okay? So writing about just one small moment in your life. That is another way to think of ideas. So 2 strategies we have for coming up with ideas to write a personal narrative. We're going to add all the things we learned about personal narratives over there on that board. Okay, so yesterday I read you a personal narrative. It was called Owl Moon. Okay, you shouldn't be messing with pencils. You shouldn't be messing with erasers. You shouldn't be messing with your stuffed animals or your water bottle. You should be listening with every part of your body. Okay, so she went owling with her dad. Did she write about everything she did that day and everything she did afterwards?
No.
She didn't even write about going to bed when she got back to her house. It started with her and her pa walking out to the forest, and it ended with them leaving the forest. She didn't talk about what she did before she went out in the forest. She didn't talk about putting all her clothes on and getting all warm. She didn't talk about going back to the house and getting hot cocoa and then going to bed. She only talked about her and Pa going owling. So I'm not going to reread it, but I'm just going to go through it and kind of just retell the story. So you remember that she just one moment. So it was late one winter night, and they went out into the snow. They're getting closer to the forest. Remember, she could hear a train and some dogs barking, and they got towards the woods. And they kept walking in the woods. She could see the shadows as she's walking, and she had to stay quiet. She didn't want to scare the owls away. Then her dad started calling to the owls, but they didn't hear anything, so they kept walking. And he called again, and still didn't hear anything. Then they got to a clearing, and they walked through that clearing. She had to stay quiet. And they kept going and going through the woods. She talked about how she was cold and how her face was kind of wet from the scarf around her face. Then they got to a clearing in the woods. And then they called out again for that owl. And then he called out again. They kept calling. Then they got a call back. And then all of a sudden they saw the shadow coming towards them. And Pa turned on the flashlight real fast, and they caught the owl in the light as it was landing on a branch. Chase, put that away. And then they stared, she said, what felt like 100 minutes staring at that owl. And then it got up, and it left. And then it was time for them to walk home. And they walked home. So she told us a long story about one small little moment. So yesterday you brainstormed some ideas for your writing. Let me find mine. So I came up with a joyful one. I got married, or I saw the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Or a sad one, I moved far away from my family, or my dog Luke passed away. Or a frightened one, I got coronavirus, or my husband's car accident when I learned about his car accident. Or another, I wrote tornado tore down a barn at the farm. Or I picked up my new puppy, Alice. Those are some other ones. So I came up with 8 things I could write about. So now it's time for me to pick one. And I decided I'm going to write about the tornado that tore down my family's barn. So now, you've seen this before. It looks a little different. It's got circles all around it. Because all stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we use this. We can draw pictures. Or we can write what happens in the beginning, middle, and end of our story. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start working on our story planner. So I'm going to do my story about the tornado. So I think I'm going to begin it. Remember, I don't begin it on what I did that day, right? I don't talk about what I ate for supper before the tornado warning. I'm just going to start with the tornado warning. Okay? So I heard the tornado warning. Heard the tornado warning. I hid in the bathtub. Yeah. I don't have a cellar, so I have to hide in my bathtub whenever a tornado comes. That's the safest. Stop, please. Interrupting. This is my story. There is no windows in the bathroom, and there's no walls that go to outside, so it's the safest place for me to be. And then my dad called and said he was in his bathtub. They do have a cellar, but the storm was coming so fast that a friend called them and said, take cover. And my dad had a boot on his foot. Have you ever seen someone have a boot on their foot because their foot's hurt? He couldn't get down in the cellar. So him and my mom got in the bathtub. And he called and said he was in his bathtub. Okay, now in the middle, he called me back and said he heard a tornado. He heard the tornado. Okay, he heard it go by, and then he tells me he goes out. He went in the garage. This was after the tornado left. When he got on the phone with me, he said, I heard the tornado, and he went in the garage and saw that the barn was gone. The barn right next to the house. Okay. It was gone. This is my story. My story, remember? Okay. Then the end, we went to their house that night to see the damage. And I'll talk more about the damage. Okay. Okay, and I'll probably say at the end that I was glad no one got hurt, right? Because that was the most important part. Okay, so this is my story, hands down. This is my story that I'm going to write about a tornado. Now, if you write about a tornado, because a couple of you told me about a tornado, you can't be like my story. You've got to do your own story. So you can't write it like mine. I heard the tornado warning. I hid in the bathtub. My dad called and said he was in his bathtub. That's my beginning. In the middle, he called me back and said he heard the tornado. He went in the garage and saw that the barn was gone. And at the end, we went to their house to see the damage. So that is my story. Now, you can draw pictures for your beginning, middle, and end. Or you can write a sentence or two for your beginning, middle, and end. Okay? This doesn't have to be perfect sentences, capital periods. Just write what you want to put in the middle, beginning, write what you want to put in the middle, and write what you want to put in the end. But before you can go on to doing your beginning, middle, and end, you have to show me your planner. And you have to have at least 3 things on there that you can write about. Okay? So I want you to pull out your planner. And I want you to make sure you have at least 3 things. You can have 8 like I did. Okay? Pull out not your planner, I'm sorry, your brainstorming sheet. This sheet. Okay, you need to at least have 3 things. So if you're not done with that, I want you to work on that. Okay? Then when you are done and you decided which one you want to write about, you're going to raise your hand and I'm going to have you tell me the beginning, middle, and end before you do this page. Okay? No, there has to be 3 total. Okay? I don't know. It's probably in your purple folder. That's where it should be. That's not your purple folder.